From a young age, I was always the most sensitive kid in the bunch. I had and still have a strong sense of what is right or just and expect the world to bend to that understanding of justice. Thinking through my childhood, a huge influence is the story of David and Goliath. The biggest lesson for me from that story was God sticks up for the little guy. This really shaped my understanding of how the world should be. When the world wasn't as it should be, I would be frustrated. As I got older, this value stuck. How am I doing my part to show up for those most impacted by systems and principalities of injustice?
As a kid working through complex trauma in a mixed status family, I first felt at home in a youth wilderness program that was led by a beloved Totonac elder from my religious community. Being Indigenous-led, it was an inherently decolonial space where we learned to practice collective care, community interdependence, and respect for the land as our first teacher. I learned who we can become when we recognize that our salvation lies in each other's hands. It compels us to take care of ourselves and to do as much as within our power on a given day, because we never know when another person is going to be oppressed or afflicted in a way that they will not have so much to contribute and they will need our support. We really need everyone if we're going to make it through the wilderness, and that's what solidarity means to me. And I know that I learned this kind of solidarity by living in connection to the land rather than through domination.
So I once was going to be a pastor, and I thought that with my love of faith and my love of social justice, the sort of natural marriage of those two things was to go to divinity school, to get ordained, to have a church, and to try to do some good in the world through that church. There came a point when I realized that actually I really wanted to be beyond the four walls of the church, that my real calling, at least to me, seemed to be more so with the people, and I found that through community organizing. I decided ultimately to stay in Seattle because I felt like the opportunity that I had wanted to go to school to maybe pursue was actually manifesting right here in front of me. What now is the Faithland Initiative at the Church Council of Greater Seattle, but initially was the Faithland Discernment Cohort. And that came out of much conversation with community-based organizations rooted in communities of color that were facing displacement on one hand, and very privileged, often cash poor but land rich, predominantly white congregations on the other hand, that both realized they needed to do something to change the conditions in their communities, but on very different sides of that conversation. And so, after hearing all these different conversations for years, myself and a few other colleagues were like, maybe we should bring all the things together. And that's sort of where all of this came to be.
As a woman of color from a low-income and first-generation immigrant household, I grew up seeing the criminal justice and immigration system racially profile, target, harass, abuse, and traumatize my community. Witnessing the harm these systems cause showed me at a very young age that experiencing injustice were common, routine even, and something folks of color need to prepare for. Law enforcement alarmed and instilled fear in my community, showing us that we could not trust the systems that are meant to serve and protect us. We have learned to rely on each other. Very young, I promised myself I was not going to accept a life where my community would have to keep their head down and live amongst the shadows like second-class citizens, like we didn't deserve to be here or like we didn't belong.
When I was in 7th grade, I was suspended for starting a brawl. At the time, I felt like I had accomplished something. I felt entitled to enact justice on my own terms, emboldened by the circumstances and my anger. It wasn't until later when I started to better understand the real, unavoidable injustice in my own life, the lives of my peers, and in our world that I could see the truth, that the road that most readily rises to meet our feet is often not that of justice or peace, that justice is often something we must seek.
Growing up, I never wanted to have a corporate job, crammed into a sterile, anonymous cubicle. I was also raised in a strong love your neighbor religion that quickly proved to be more committed to that in statement than in practice. Diving into the nonprofit world at age 16 seemed to help me solve both of these issues. My work was relational, hands-on, and impactful in addressing deeply rooted injustices in society. However, I also learned that the nonprofit world did not often value me, and it did not value my BIPOC coworkers, my coworkers with disabilities, my queer and trans coworkers, and when I really thought about it, did not meaningfully value the people we claim to serve. How were staff expected to support people experiencing poverty and homelessness while struggling to stay housed themselves? How could we serve impacted communities' best interests when the board was made up of the wealthiest and most powerful white people in the city.
30 plus years in corporate retail, chasing profits, driving mass consumerism that is killing our planet, my worth tied directly to how much my business increases year over year. Vacuous, empty. Contrasted to 20 plus years of faith-centered social justice work in my free time, working on homelessness, poverty, hunger. It seemed the more I was pushed at my corporate job, the more I engaged in social justice, as if to alleviate my sins of conspiracy, or at minimum to help me feel better, that I'm doing something of value in my community to bring the kingdom of God alive right here, right now. It's about choice. Where do you choose to put your energy and spiritual values of human dignity, love, and compassion, that good stuff that drives your social justice work?
After joining the State Ecumenical Association in 1998, I worked on living wage issues and tax fairness across the state of Washington. In the middle of 2003, I received a phone call from my supervisor. We had lost our funding, and I had 2 weeks left in my position. Suddenly, my family's world turned upside down. I had worked for the church my entire life. How would I continue to construct peace and a secure future for my 2 young daughters? That year, through now Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, I came to coordinate the Seattle bus for the Immigrant Workers Freedom Ride with Hate Free Zone in the Church Council, calling for comprehensive immigration reform. Faith and justice harmonized for me once again. The following year, I took a chance applying for the social justice minister position at the Church Council. Walking in a park I had never seen in Shoreline, on a beautiful, almost spring day, a small waterfall in a creek caught my eye. I recalled the words, "Justice shall roll down like waters, and righteousness like a roaring stream." I was drawn to the Church Council's long history of working for social, economic, and racial justice.
And then I heard that the Church Council was doing things differently, that staff was involved in every major decision of the organization, including funding. That intentional, relational, anti-racist organizing was the actual practice, not just a buzzword. That our work in the community is with the community, led by the community.
My work at the Church Council is about moving resources and redirecting the collective power of faith communities in Seattle and King County to address the root causes of systemic oppression. My work is about supporting congregations, knowing when and where and how to show up, and whose leadership to follow.
The relationships and spiritual development that are formed in the process of community organizing work are what motivates me to practice resilience, mindfulness, and radical love in order to reach our common goals. Everything touches the land, from indigenous sovereignty to renters' rights, immigration, healthcare, disability justice, farm workers' rights, and all other modern-day ills of colonial violence. And I know that the land can also heal us of these things.
I really am so excited about the opportunity that I see with Faithland Initiative and how that ties to the larger mission of the Church Council of Greater Seattle, because it really shows how we are uniquely positioned, not only by touching faith communities, but also by acting in ways that are aligned in anti-racist values to make a huge difference in this area and potentially have ripple effects across the entire nation in ways that I don't even think other people are foreseeing.
This work that I do, I hold very close to my heart because I know we don't deserve any of this, and my family, my people deserve better. In a liberated world where our people flourish, they receive justice regardless of their citizen status and race. I've kept my promise and have been devoted to my people through many pathways. I joined the Church Council because my values connected with the values undergirding accompanying immigrant community members. Being part of a community filled with impacted community-led coalitions, partners, and individuals in the struggle for their dignity and safety as they navigate a deeply broken system spoke to me. Stepping into an organization that addressed the intersection of two critical and powerful systems is how I continue keeping my promise.
I'm grateful today to stand among the powerful organizers and remarkable human beings who make up the Church Council staff, board, and community. Through every challenge and change, I feel us continuing purposefully together along the intrepid road rather than the easy one. abandoning shallow solutions and seeking true peace and justice in ways that do not pit us against one another, but instead bring us together as we build toward liberation for us all.
My yes brought me here to the church council. Yes to my faith-led commitment to love and reconciliation, to breaking down the barriers that keep us apart. Yes to building beloved community.
Like the waters of a creek flowing over the rocks, the story of the Church Council of Greater Seattle continues to unfold.